First game of Worlds was really crazy. To finally be back on stage, even without a crowd, it just felt amazing.
I feel like we got surprised by Sanning, or didn't really get surprised, but played.
Suning with a beautiful counter-attack. 4 dead for G2.
SOFM, learn this man's name because you are going to be seeing a lot of him.
The fact that it was a win, and especially against Suning, who's a really, really strong team at this tournament, just makes me super happy. Like, even the way it happened.
Players or Nexus, it is 1 for 1. Cap coming in with the ulti, gold card goes out, Hwafeng goes down. It's Perkz, baby, knock, knock. Suning's advance is resisted. G2 has persisted, and Perkz insisted on a win in this game.
This is League of Legends, baby. What a game!
这是我们第一场世界赛，跟我们预料不太一样。原本会觉得可能会全败吧。
Gemini looking to fight back here in the mid lane.
Here we go, nice follow-up. Oh, Jensen, he flashes away, but will not be enough. Gemini takes the kill.
我觉得 G2 的5个人都是很聪明的人，所以我们遇到他们的时候绝对不可以投机，才有机会赢下他们。
Top versus DRX for sure is going to be a banger.
Knight, by a lot of recollection, is the best player in the world, the best mid laner in the world. Jig gets a big stun across the front lines. That's going to be a stopwatch burned already. Knight still safe, finds Solo, finds the first kill. Time for number 2, gets it as well. A double kill now for the LPL MVP.
Chovy is really insane. Precise is the word, because it feels like the man doesn't have a fault.
Burn flashes in, gets into it. That's going to be a lot of damage. Is it going to be enough for the kill? Not just yet. The flash in Pyosik.
The chunk with his W setting up Pyosik.
He did come here last year with Griffin, and they faltered. He has a lot to prove, and he's going to have a very challenging mid lane opponent in Knight.
Knight is just unanswerable. That is Boss going down. Chovy is the boss here.
You never know what will happen at Worlds.
The stage is set, the curtain is drawn.
没人能够预见会是这种情况。
This is the game people want to see.
新的王者诞生了 ！Kaboom! They lit the fuse. 你看到了吗
They're gonna win. This is it.
Welcome to Worlds Countdown, live from our studio in Berlin. But here we're getting a look at Shanghai, a closer look at the newcomers Suning Gaming through the lens of the Oppo Cam. The LPL 3rd seed suffered a tough loss in their Worlds debut, so we'll see if they can bounce back as the Group A teams hit the rift in our opening games. They still seem to be in high spirits, and why would you not be if you were part of one of the most hyped games at Worlds ever? We'll discuss. Yes, we're waving back, you just can't see it yet. Hello everyone, I'm Shox, kicking off the action today with Kadril and with Frosk. We had a good 2 days behind us. Kadril we've seen already, but Frosk, welcome to the Worlds group stage.
I have been so excited to get on the stage so far. They couldn't keep me away forever, so like, let's get into it, Shox. I'm hyped. I'm ready to go.
And you brought the outfit too, so I'm super excited. So let's pull up the standings, and we see G2 Esports and Machi. They started Group A with wins yesterday. And if you look at every other group, you do start to notice a little trend because the LCK is undefeated coming into day 3. But I do want to just sit on this graphic for a while and just look at how the groups have developed so far. Kadril, what is jumping out to you in terms of these groups and how they have been performing?
I think the 2 standout things for me is the fact that G2 took down Sunning yesterday. I think that kind of solidifies the first best one against Sunning, who arguably is the 1st/2nd seed going out the group with G2. So that's huge for G2, I think. And then looking at Group B, you can see Rogue, JD, they both got stomped by Damwon. They do have 1 win, 1 loss, both of them beating PSG. But I think that game between Rogue and JDG is going to decide the group almost.
Yeah, just to kind of kick off of what Kadril was talking about, you look at Group B and you look at Group D and you feel like things are pretty clear decided. You know, maybe Rogue goes for an upset there, but you kind of have those 2 clear favorites. Group A, especially with Machi stepping up, and Group B, or excuse me, Group C now kind of throws everything into chaos, where like anyone could pop out of these groups, and it's kind of how you define a group to death. Is it everyone has a possibility of getting out, or you have like two team favorites? No one's getting out.
And quickly, of course, a big talking point amongst our main viewers as well is the fact that NA is winless so far. Frosk, what's your opinion on all of that?
I want to pump the brakes a little bit on getting concerned for NA. I know it looks really bad, but I think that Team Liquid, if they ran back that game against Machi, that they would have won. I think it was some execution, maybe some drafting errors. We'll talk about it, but I don't think you need to be hitting like the emergency bells just yet.
No emergency meeting just yet. Maybe a little one. I do want to talk about the LCK. Such a big storyline coming into Worlds every single time, but even more so in the last 2 years, because it's been 2 years since the famed fall of the LCK, Frosk, but they seem back.
So if you guys are new to League of Legends, this is for your first World Championship, you don't know it, but the LCK, they're pretty scary. They've been dominating for a very long time, and it was kind of a question of separating the SKT mystique with the LCK mystique. And now that SKT isn't really just representing Korea every single time, like yes, there's the Samsungs and things like that with Gen.G now, but they kind of fell away, and suddenly you have them back where they're undefeated. Last year they took first in all of their group stage, so it's kind of this revenge, if you will, a redemption for the region with very new faces and brand new talent.
Yeah, and going off what Frosk said, I think that if you look at the LCK historically, just in terms of playstyle, they were so surgical and clinical, and when it came to the games, they would play super good macro. They wouldn't take too many fights. They would rely more on their intellectual play rather than their skirmish heavy fighting. And I think over the last 2 years the meta's developed to the point where you have to fight so much in a sense where you look at the LPL, you look at the EU, the last 2 years, just so much fighting. And I think that LCK has adapted really well over the last couple of years, and I think that they've brought way more aggression to Worlds.
And although, of course, none of the LCK representatives this year are slouches, there is one team that just, is above the rest and maybe above any team here at Worlds, Damwon. What dominance we've seen from them, of course, in LCK, but now also on the world stage. And what was particularly scary to me yesterday, Frosk, is that they showed that they don't always have to go all in and just skirmish you straight into the base, basically, but they can also take it slow and, as said, bring some of that surgical approach back.
Discipline is kind of the word that I want to use with Damwon, and I think that their victory over Rogue was way more dominant than the first time we saw them just punch down on PSG, and I think this is what is really scary about the team, is the individual mechanical abilities, and then also that discipline in combining the aggression, if you will, of the LPL teams and the macro sense and discipline of the LCK teams into this perfect package that is finally being unleashed.
Yeah, and I think if you look at Damwon, you can see JDG, they go full on the gas, they stomp them away against Rogue. They draft a comp where they have to be more calm and tamed, and they've shown so many different styles of play with just one pick in the Lulu top.
Exactly. Really impressive for them. You want to add something? Or?
Yeah, as we're talking about the LCK and as we're building them back up and having this redemption moment for the region, I do want to, again, caution or just add nuance to it that, you know, maybe we see DRX today and maybe DRX comes out and absolutely just smashes TES. And then in which case I'm like, yes, LCK is definitely back. But right now, I do not see the same dominance from Gen.G that I do from Damwon. And so I want to, again, separate the LCK mystique and power from the LCK first seed mystique and power, because Damwon look on a completely different level.
And of course, second caveat, they also topped the groups and came out as first seed last year, but it didn't parlay into the best of 5, so we'll have to see about that. A lot of question marks also in terms of the meta, and yesterday, if you remember, we took so much time to talk about the meta, highlighting the importance of jungle pools heading into the matchups. So we're going to do a quick follow-up today, namely also because I actually have someone who knows something about jungle in comparison to Ender. We have Cajal, who is a professional jungler. So Cajal,
murder him like that?
So Cajal, talk to me about kind of how the jungle meta pool is evolving.
It's evolving in so many different ways. I think if you look at yesterday's games, you could see Rogue first picking Hecarim, the Eastern teams, the LPL. They really like to just go for the Nidalee first picks. I think it all depends on comfort, because the way I see it right now is the draft is more centered towards mid-top jungle. I think it's all top side, the draft, depending on how your comp plays out, whether you go for the Renekton Nidalee, whether you go for the Ornn, Grave, stuff like this. And I think that it's sort of like a pick and mix slotting in. If you first pick the Nidalee, your solo lanes have to adapt with AD mids or like a Renekton top or a Camille or a Sett. Whereas if you want to just go with strong solo lane picks, like you first pick like the Ornn or the Renekton, then the jungle's the one who has to adapt. So I think that if you have a good mixture of flexibility in the top side and you draft based on your priorities. I think that the flexibility is the key for me when it comes to jungle.
I think it's also about how you're setting up for your jungler. Like you're talking about how the picks will change it, but it's also, you know, if you're bringing setup or hard CC in your lane phase, then it becomes much easier to play a jungler like a Nidalee, like a Lee Sin, like a Volibear that we've seen when they get to run into the lane and have the ganks, you know, the you hold, I punch type of method. Versus if you're using a farming jungler, it's much more about the setup of the priority, the pushing that you can acquire into a lane phase, and you don't normally need that much CC. But I see these compositions struggling a bit more in terms of execution rather than the comps that are just loaded with hard CC.
Yeah, I think the hold and the punch thing makes a lot of sense based on the meta, because if you look at it in general, you need engage somewhere. It has to come from either top or jungle most of the time. You need setup as well, so it all depends on where you want to be flexible, how you want to draft the picks, and making sure you have the right setup. Either it's like good setup in 2v2s, so you can start fighting for the prio, or pushing lane so the jungle can invade and then join him up. So there's many different ways to play it. It's just based on what you want to do.
A fun fact is that Lilia dropped from 87 presence to 58 in
Thank
groups.
God.
There was some Scrim God, I guess, of playing on Lilia, but it just
yeah.
doesn't work in the compositions as much as we've seen the meta evolve.
I also just think it's a harder play style to play, and that, you know, it's about multiple rotations through Lilia. It's about creating that farm advantage, EXP advantage, and then you can rock in, you know, late game once you have the Leandres, once you have the Dead Man's Plate, if that's the itemization you want to go for. But a lot of teams will like sprint the Lilia in, she'll flash in early, she'll then immediately die because she is quite a squishy champion, and I think it's execution error. So I hope we see more Lilia as the tournament goes on, but teams need to realize that it's much harder to execute with her than like your traditional Nidalees.
On top of kind of that pick priority, another takeaway from yesterday's games was that teams who lacked engage were heavily punished. Now, that's kind of a no-brainer to me. I mean, I know there's different metas and stuff, but completely lacking any form of engage, that's not going to work out for you, and we saw it yesterday.
We saw it in the TL game, you saw it in the Fnatic game. I'm sure that we'll bring up their drafts, but the primary thing that I really want to talk about, and Kadriel, you talk about this a lot in your casting, it's contesting mid-wave. And you can contest mid-wave either through pushing it faster and then moving into our big, powerful monster objectives, because Baron and Dragon Souls are still exceptionally powerful. Games are getting stalled out around them a long time. Or you have to have pick potential on it. And if you have something like an Ashe, like an Ornn, when you go up into the mid-wave, you can start throwing these long-range engage tools, and then you open up a completely another avenue to play through where you're not just waiting for, you know, your two big 5v5 comps to run into each other on a Dragon Pit. Suddenly you can start creating opportunities and pick advantages over contesting mid-wave, contesting side waves. And as you look at, you know, TL's draft, where's your hard engage? Is that the Mordekaiser flash ult?
It's a Lux there.
Exactly, and I mean, when it comes down to hard engage, normally the champs with these point and click buttons, they kind of lose lane or they're kind of weak in the early game. So like the Ornn, the Volibear, and the jungler stuff like this. So if you look at TL's comp, they have winning lanes, they have a winning jungle matchup. The whole idea of drafting this engage is the fact that you're giving up the early lane power, you're giving up the early lane advantage, and then when it comes to the mid game, that's when you want to get online. So the team without the engage needs to be the ones to get gold leads, get the first couple Drakes, and then when it comes to the mid game, they're the ones with the mid push, they're the ones on the objective first, so they have to make you walk into them rather than them being the ones engaging on you. So it is a playstyle that kind of works. We saw it with Fnatic's comp yesterday as well. Not much engage, whereas on the side of LGD, you have Ornn, Nautilus, so way more press R, let's go. So Fnatic needed to play the game a lot more clinical and clean, contest the waves properly, and then just set up the vision around it.
Yeah, and I do want to give a little bit of credit to Fnatic's composition here. I don't think that they'll do this again, but to me, it feels like if you can find an answer into the Ornn because of how powerful he is right now, like if that set counter pick worked, and you could see what Bwipo was trying to do. Ornn would charge up the ultimate, Set would then grab the Ornn before he was able to connect the ult, and kind of like trade back and forth. Like then suddenly you open up your draft phase so much because you're no longer responsible for banning the Ornn. But it didn't work. The team fights weren't executed correctly. And again, it comes down to ease of execution, like Kadriel was talking about, those big R buttons. And in group stage, when it's just about consistency, when it's just about getting as many wins as possible, just make it as easy as possible and maybe try this again in the best ofs.
Yeah, and just relating to the Fnatic game, I mean, you saw Bwipo on the set. He was having so much top pressure. He got the top tower. He moved into the bot side, and they just couldn't find the engage. And I just think that these point and click abilities, like you see the Ornn, the Ashe, the Rakan, they're just easier to execute. I think that when it comes to winning lanes, yes, you can win the lane. Yes, you can get a goal advantage. Yes, you can win the 1-3-1, but the meta is just so much about, again, mid waves. You saw the Larssen got hit by the arrow, the fight was lost, the engage was clean, another Ashe arrow comes out, and I just think Ornn, Ashe, Rakan for me, top 3 engagers right now, alongside maybe a Leona and a Nautilus here and there. But if these champs are on the enemy team and you aren't punishing as much as you could, then why give them up? You should just be prioritizing them a lot.
Yep, so you've heard it here. You can see it on the lower third. If you're a fan of a team, these are the champions that you want to see in the draft. I do not want to see teams that are basically winning the game and then the game gets stalled out away from them because they don't have the tools to pull the trigger. I feel like that's what really happened in the TL game. That's what really happened in the Fnatic game.
I
And
was just going to say the amount of dragons and like Baron 50-50s we've seen just plays into that as well.
50s. And the last thing I was just going to say is just based on the meta through playoffs in most of the regions, you saw people not really blind picking their account. They didn't want to blind pick the Orin because they would lose the lanes and they would get punished. But in this meta, it's just so hard to punish these days.
It is. So draft that engage, coaches. With that, we're going to jump into Machi versus G2 Esports shortly. Before we do, though, we're going to take a look at the Red Bull top play of the day. I love this one. It highlights Mikyx's expert use of the Blast Cone versus Suning. It's just so beautiful.
Mickey was smurfing out his mind. I mean, the Bard ults, immobile carries, always landing it, and then the double stun on top of that, where SFM, yeah, maybe he shouldn't have W'd and he did get stunned with him. But I think that as a pro player myself, I think the only real way to counter these kind of mechanical outplays is the only way you can counter a ward on a Lantern or on a Blast Cone is you zoom in real quick with your camera, and then you should be able to click it. But in this scenario, it's just so much pressure, and he hit the wall twice, man. Mickey's crazy.
Literally, Uzi stopped what he was doing wherever he was in the world. He's like, oh no, I feel a disturbance again. Like that one was so good.
That was
Mickey.
beautiful.
Beautiful. And I mean, Mickey also just took the team on his back for a lot of those engages as well. Let's take a look at the action ahead of us. We may see more of those Mickey outplays because things are going to kick off with Machi versus G2, then followed by Team Liquid versus Suning. I am really hyped to see kind of how things evolve in that Group A. At the end of the day, we also have Top versus DRX. And, you know, possible upset with FlyQuest. Just kidding. Rogue versus JD.
Okay. Shox, I'm tired of pretending it's not true. I know we've got the bangers, JDG versus Rogue, Top Esports versus DRX, but I'm tired of pretending that Unicorns of Love versus FlyQuest isn't the absolute...
I'm so
That is the party I want to go to.
Yes.
I want in that fiesta.
It's going to be an absolute bloodbath.
It's going to be a bloodbath, and I love it also just for both teams. FlyQuest, you know, they have their strengths and they can win this game. Unicorns of Love can win this game as well, and it would be the first win. Very much spicing up that group, because I think we need that in that group as well.
Definitely. I mean, there's the front runners, but UOL have shown us the magic. They've shown us the magic in play-ins. Can they show us the magic in group stage? It's the question.
We'll see, and hopefully a first win on the board for NA today. We are going to step away for just a second, but on the other side, Kadrill is going to tell us how on earth G2 managed to beat Suning. See you there after this.
Thanks.
So hold our heads up high and beat the drum to what we love. Risk the fall, oh, we have felt it all come crashing down from far above. Stars are rising, countless worlds colliding. Only one will take it all. Can we bring to fall the giants? Can we make the final call? We are the ones to ignite the darkened skies. The champions of a world that we defy. A solar ray of the few who rise up high. And we all fight at the last ride. Hearing voices from afar, join the madness when the curtain falls. Risk it all, hold nothing back. Seize the day, we must attack. Stars are rising, countless worlds colliding. Only one will take it all. Can we bring to fall the giants? Can we make the final call? We are the ones to ignite the darkened skies. The champions we bring to fall the giants?
Welcome back, everyone, to World's Countdown, where we are looking at G2 Esports' dramatic return to the international stage. There are honestly not enough adjectives to talk about that game yesterday versus Suning, which felt like a 5-game series all in one game. And, you know, you see off the glee of Cap's face how close it was.
Oh, shaking.
Oh, my God. Unreal. So, actually, it was very interesting for many reasons because we had some question marks about G2 and their form, Frosk. But one focal point was the bot lane, and they stepped up yesterday.
And I'm going to say G2 proved me wrong. Yamada talked about it yesterday on the analyst desk, this one-year plan. Last time G2 made the stretch all the way to the World Finals, they felt burnt out at the very end, and they just utterly collapsed. This time around, they took things much slower. We did not see this type of performance from G2 in the entire 2020 season. And now to see them come in their first game of Worlds and immediately hit the gas from Perkz and Mickey specifically, like, they shut me the hell up. Perkz and Mickey came to play.
Yeah, I mean, the bot lane carried, let's be honest. I mean, Perkz did make a few misplays here and there by getting hit by hooks in some team fights in the mid game, but look at his damage, man. He's had so much damage in the fights, and I just think Mickey, especially for me, was my MVP in terms of map state, making the engages happen, getting clutch Qs in the fight on Bard and getting so many stuns, and wow, they just really stepped up.
Now, the question and the nuance that I want to bring to this conversation is this was on Ezreal. And the thing is Perkz, once he lost the Xayah and the Kai'Sa, he really fell behind the rest of the AD carry meta. And as the AD carry meta continues to evolve, you know, as we're seeing the Twitches come out, even the Caitlyn's, the Ashe is still such a high priority. Perkz has a good Ashe, a decent Ashe, but is it a ruler Ashe? And if he isn't on this Ezreal, can he still do the same things that he did yesterday? Because we haven't seen that type of performance. Like, we always knew he was a good Ezreal, but can he be a good Jhin, a good Ashe, a good Senna?
That's a great question. Only one thing I have to ask, of course, is we saw him clocking 10k damage in the important fights at the latter part of the game. But we did Ezreal, yeah. But we did also see some arcane shifts right into the enemy team. And yeah, I want to say just out of place movement there in the mid game. Is that concerning, or can you wipe that under the rug because of how the game evolved?
Limit testing.
First game of World, just test some limits.
All right.
Yeah,
sure.
It was a bit touch and go there, some physical touching, if you will, and the arcane shifts forward. But I mean, 10k damage in. He's playing to win. He's not playing not to lose.
Exactly.
Got it.
That's what I say all the time. Just go for the kills.
Also, Claps is back. You know, you say the bot lane carried, yes, but, you know, Caps was also in rare form. Now, I have a stat that's actually insane. His Twisted Fate performance, he dealt 893 damage per minute, which is the highest recorded damage per minute on TF in the summer of 2020, crushing it by more than 100 out of Worlds, plus any player in any regional league over 300 TF games recorded. What?
900 damage per minute on TF.
On TF.
It's completely legal. I can tell you that from the start. I mean, even people on Azir, Syndra, Orianna, they don't even get close to this DPM. And the fact that Caps pulls that off on TF is, it's crazy. Him and Perkz in the fights are doing so much damage. And I think if you look at Caps historically, this is his third Worlds in a row almost. So it is his third World in a row. Oh, got that one badly
Almost.
out.
Nailed it.
And his playstyle historically was so good. I mean, you saw him at the Worlds last year and the year before. He picked Talia. He'd roam top all the time, get his team ahead. The Yasuo roaming top as well. Level 4, level 5. And then if you give Caps a champion like TF on a first pick, I think, yeah, it's a big mistake.
I think it's this consistency thing about Caps, because whereas Picky and Mercs, Perkz and Mickey, it's such a good duo name now. It's the Brangelina of G2's bot lane, where they have been inconsistent and Jankos has been inconsistent this year. Caps has been in perfect form. And so this idea between craps and claps, I don't think exists anymore. That's what's so scary about G2, and that's what's so scary about this guy right now. He is in consistent form. You are getting claps every single game.
I want to push the brakes a little bit just because You know, we had a one-game sample, and
I'm not saying they win the tournament right now. I'm just saying
okay, this game, yeah, and this game is good. I'm just trying to temper, so, you know, if they get clapped by Machi later, you know, we don't look awkward, but, you know, we probably will. One other thing you did want to highlight on a more serious note is we talked about the importance of draft and games being even more win or lost in drafts than they have been historically, and the fact that G2 won against a draft that was really bad against or good rather against our composition. They outplayed the draft difference, which is hopeful.
Yeah, they had 4 range champs into somewhat hard engage with flashes, and they played it so well. They kited back well. They waited for the stun cards, waited for the Ezreal poke. Yes, they did go up an Ocean Soul, which was a bit of a mistake, but I think the thing that kind of I was questioning coming into Worlds is can Jankos play the carry jungles? And looking at this great performance, I wouldn't say I'm sold on it yet. Sure. It wasn't the greatest, so we have to wait and see on that, but Caps, Perkz, and Mickey, huge step up. Wunder played the fights really well, and yeah, they executed the fight so well. Even the draft, it didn't have much hard engage, like we said earlier on. You need the hard engage to start the fights. They didn't actually start the fights themselves. The only real hard engage they had was the Mickey X on the Bardolt. And other than that, they were mid-wave contests.
Yeah, I'm going to cut you off and let Frost come in because you have a breakdown in just a second.
Yeah, it's true.
The fact of the matter is that there are certain teams in Worlds that are good enough that they can break the meta, that they can redefine it. These are going to be like your SKTs, your Damn ones, your G2s that have proven themselves in the past and now here. We always talk about ease of execution because when everyone's so tightly knit, ease of execution can often be the make or break difference. But G2 in that wild game, it wasn't a perfect game. It was a very entertaining game. But they broke, in my opinion, the draft difference. And they showed that they were the better players and the better team on the difference on the day. Because I was like, there's no way G2 win this game. It is illegal if they win this game right now. And they managed to do it.
And another caveat there, Grabs, then, you know, just draft. You know, if you have a winning draft, then you don't have to go through all those hoops. I mean, I don't know what you're doing. Just kidding, of course. But Caterol, I said it already. You're going to break down some of those team fights to us, which completely broke open the game.
Where it was, I think this was the most deciding team fight, because if you look at the game state itself, like Frost said, it was illegal that G2 actually won this game. If you look at the game state right now, Sunning, they have the Ocean Soul. I mean, this is the strongest Ocean Soul, the strongest soul you can get in the game. And if you look at the positioning, G2 is kind of pushing in the mid-wave. SOFM did go in, get chunked out. He used his ult to try and start the fight. They don't have the arrow from Huang Feng either. And Bin just uses ult, so he definitely wants to start the fight. And if we roll this one out, you can see G2 with the 4 range champs. They're just kind of poking them out, and Sunning know that as soon as they get to this objective, their mid waves are pushing in, their side waves are in a bad spot, so they kind of have to fight, force this fight. And you can see Bin instantly, instantly tries to flash onto Caps. He does get exhausted. And now the other thing I want to highlight was their only turn potential they really have without the arrow is flashes. And Sword Art actually queued and then flashed on top of himself. So one of their engages failed, and then Bin went in 1 versus 4 without any follow-up. So as soon as this fight starts, they kind of had to instantly disengage. And G2 know now that they don't have any real forms of engage. They can kind of chase him down, and it's right here. Bin, he splits off from his team. We can see it on the side. And G2 don't actually know it just yet, but they just about find out in a second. You can see Mickey X, Perkz, and Jankos, they all see it. Wunder's running as well, and Caps with the ultimate was amazing. And he comes from the side. He has the stun card with the rapid, and this Bard stun from Mickey X hits Angel as well. With Angel has the flash, he has the Syndra ult. It's so much damage for them. He gets taken out from the rapid-fire stun card from Caps. And then G2, they're in a 4v5. Yes, they have the Ocean Soul on the side of Sunning, but they don't have any engage. And if they can't engage and Huang Feng just can't hit in this fight, he's just spamming volleys. And you can see Sword Art tries to turn, Wunder flash on Huang Feng to force him out to fight. And G2 just pushed him out into their jungle. And now all that Sunning can do is kind of try to lifesteal up, use the Ocean Soul to kind of heal up. G2 starting the Elder, and if you get the Elder, it kind of seals the game in a sense that you can't really fight them for the next couple minutes. And you can see Sunning trying to poke and prod, trying to get an engage. And SOFM, he kind of finds Mickey X here. He does get a lot of damage in a second. And that kind of helps him in the fight. Huang Feng is able to step up. If you watch him here, he does step up a little bit. Sword Art tries to follow as well, but the arrow hits Perkz. Wunder instantly jumps onto Huang Feng. And as soon as Huang Feng gets taken down from Perkz here, he has flash up, he dies, he has no QSS, he gets stunned up, and now the fight, it's kind of over. The Ocean Soul doesn't help you when you're in the graveyard. So G2, they go almost 5-0 in this fight. They get Elder Soul, they get Baron. SOFM tries to steal it. It's the only thing he can really do, but that's basically it. So, wow, props to G2. They clutched out. And now we're going to throw it to Law, who's able to catch up with Gemini, their jungler, ahead of their game against G2.
And thank you very much. Machi Esports won their first game here against Team Liquid, and I have Gemini with me to talk about the victory. Thank you very much for joining me. I want to know about your preparation against Team Liquid, and did you learn anything from the team when you saw them play in play-ins?
那首先恭喜你们获得本场比赛的胜利。那第一个问题也是要问到你们在面对 Team Liquid 之前有做哪些准备吗？比如说从他们入围赛的表现来看，然后你们有怎么样去做一些针对吗？
我自己是看了很多之前他们的比赛，还有尤其是入围赛的，然后去观察对面打野的习惯。 所以也是一部分我们会给他格雷夫他最擅长的英雄去针对他。
Basically, I've watched a lot of games of Team Liquid, especially for their play-in plays, and also I try to target on their junglers and try to make some special strategies towards them.
Ah, very interesting. Well, in that case, explain me something. You picked Volibear jungle here, which is a pick we don't often see in the carry meta. So can you explain why you think this pick makes sense here?
那首先也要问到一下，你们在这局游戏中的一个 BP， 因为你是选到了一个狗熊打野，那在现在这样的野核版本来讲，可能好像并没有那么的常见。那能问一下选择的原因是什么吗？
因为我自己在这英雄自己是觉得自己非常擅长嘛，然后我觉得配阵容也蛮好的，因为现在的版本我觉得很需要坦克，所以有时候选这种劣势一点的打野也没有关系。
So basically, I think Volibear, this champion, I'm very confident with it. And also, I think in current meta, the tanky champions is needed for our draft. So I think sometimes if I pick the Volibear, it's also suitable to our draft.
Oh, interesting for the meta. Now, last question about Machi Esports. People see you as the dark horse of Group A. What do you think of this statement?
那我们最后一个问题是要问到，其实很多人会觉得 Matchy 好像是 A 组的一个黑马，那你对这样的一个评价有什么样的看法呢？
我觉得我们自己算是一个挑战者的身份嘛，因为毕竟大家对我们的评价不是那么好，所以我们打的就比较没有压力，也并不是黑马，就只是想办法让自己打到最好，就这样。
I think instead of the dark horse, we treated ourselves as a challenger because actually there's not many people like putting very high expectations towards us. But because of this, we have no pressure in playing the games and we are just trying our best to show our performance.
And you had an amazing first performance here at Worlds. Last question for you. You will be playing the next game against G2 Esports. How do you expect things to go against them?
那你的第一场表现无疑是非常的亮眼的。那在接下来你们还是要去面对 G2， 那面对他们，你有什么样的一个评价吗？
我 G2 的 Jankos 一直是我以前的偶像，我在3年前打 IN 的时候就被他教训过了，所以我希望这次可以复仇。
Actually, the G2's jungler Jankos, he's kind of my example. And 3 years ago, I've kind of been smashed by him. So this time, I really want to take this revenge.
Oh, that is so cool. Yeah, I can't wait to see the revenge matchup for you against Jankos. But thank you very much, Gemini, for the interview. Good luck for the rest of the tournament. And thank you also for the translation.
Thank you.
Ooh, Jankos is still not, he's still shivering from SOFM, and now he's like, no, Gemini, I can't take you on as well. But he will have to. Now, we were talking so much about how, you know, inspiring, hopeful this win was from G2 yesterday, but we got to be able to say the same about Machi as well. They won over TL. They were convincing, so we got to give them the same credit.
Yeah, I think their mid jungle definitely stepped up, and I think that there was a few 50-50 Barons. We saw Ezreal secure one, Syndra secure the other, Broxo was in the pit both times, but in general, I think that looking at the champion pools across the board, they do have small champion pools, most of the players, but the one I want to focus on is Gemini, because if you look at his performance throughout the regular split and coming into Worlds, the only real champs that he's played is Lee Sin, Graves, Nidalee, and Volibear. Barring Trundle, which is kind of nerfed, I'll ignore that one for now. Could count as a fifth if there's a Skarner blind pick, but my point is that he's played 2 Nidalee games. He has only won one of them, so Nidalee might not be the most comfort, and you saw yesterday with TL, they ban away Lee Sin, they pick the Graves, so he kind of has to go Volibear. It's the only trifecta that he has left, so I wonder what happens if G2 targets his champion pool a little bit more.
Yeah, but then they target their own champion pool.
Oh, true.
Like,
yeah.
Gotcha.
I think it is fair to give the respect to Mission and Gemini in particular, and always respect kind of the spirit of the LMS coming through Machi, that they are often going to be overlooked, that their players can press their buttons very well, and if you give them their power picks, that they can punish you for it. But as Kedro was talking about, there were still a lot of 50-50 Barons. The macro wasn't as clean. It was capitalizing on a lot of mistakes that TL made specifically, and then also having a very powerful draft and having their hands on the Ornn. I don't think they'll get the same draft against G2. I hope not. Maybe they do. But I do think it's just about respecting the individual laners, but you can outthink Machi on the map, and I'm not super blown away by what I saw.
And yeah, one big reason why you say that is because you looked in depth at those Barons, for instance, and the objective fights from Machi, which had some glaring issues. Can you outline it for us for who missed the game?
So basically what they're going to do is they're going to take this Baron to 2,000 HP and they're going to burst it. Yep. And that's fine. But Ezreal will get the Baron and Broxo will be in the pit. And I get it. You can say, yeah, they knew that they were going to get it. They're going to burst it. Or you could not take a 60-40 Baron and flip it. You could have Ornn stand on the backside and you could try to zone away TL and not even open up this opportunity. The second Baron round comes through, that one's taken by Syndra, and like Kachel said, Brox is in the pit both times.
And you can, I mean, as a pro player myself, there is situations where you're like, okay, it's a 50-50, but if we all burst at 2K, it's basically a 70-30 in a sense that one of us is going to get it, right, with the smite. But in both of those cases, Jensen used the Reinhold perfectly with Broxa going in the pit. So to me, it looked like a 50-50 both times. And I think that you're right. I think if Machi has this kind of lead, you don't really need to start flipping Barons. You can just get the waves pushed out, get deep vision, punish face checks, play for side lane towers when they're on Nash side, TP in if you have to, play side lane with shadowing or something like this. I don't think you have to just go flip Nash. So
and that's the thing that kills me.
Inconsistent.
Their composition had all of the tools to do all of those things. They could have played out the game a million different ways in the way that they chose to do it.
But the good news is they've watched that VOD. They're not going to make that mistake. Usually in their in the PCS, when they have a lead, they run with it and they close it out. So hopefully that'll come out as a VOD review. Same for G2, but these two teams are now fighting to stay undefeated in Group A. So let's send it over to the Boomer and the Zoomer to get day 3 started.